In the final years of World War II, as German cities burned under relentless Allied bombing campaigns and the Reich slowly collapsed from the inside, Adolf Hitler approved one of the most audacious and unrealistic military ambitions of the entire war. A plan not meant to win battles in Europe, but to terrorize a continent an ocean away, striking directly at the heart of the United States. The target was America, more specifically, New York City. At the center of this idea was a belief Hitler had long held, that America was soft, distant, and psychologically fragile. If Germany could strike the US homeland even once, the shock alone might fracture American morale and force political hesitation. It did not matter if the physical damage was limited. What mattered was the message, a demonstration that Germany could reach across the Atlantic with deadly precision, despite the immense distance separating the continents. Germany would prove that no ocean was wide enough to protect its enemies. This vision became known as the America bomber concept. It was not a single aircraft, but a collection of desperate designs, paper studies, and experimental prototypes meant to do something no operational bomber in the world could reliably achieve at the time. Fly from Europe to North America and back, or at least one way. The problem was physics, and the problem was time. By 1941, even the most advanced long-range bombers struggled with payload, fuel consumption, engine reliability, and navigation over open ocean. The United States had the advantage of massive industrial output, stable testing environments, and secure bases. Germany did not. By the time Hitler demanded an intercontinental weapon, German industry was already under constant air attack, fuel shortages were severe, and experienced engineers were being drafted into the army or sent to defend collapsing fronts. Still, the order stood. Hitler demanded that engineers find a solution, no matter the cost. Several aircraft manufacturers were pulled into the project. Messerschmitt, Junkers, and Focke-Wulf were all tasked with proposing designs that could theoretically reach the American East Coast. The Luftwaffe provided guidance, limited testing data, and sporadic funding, though by 1943 resources were dwindling, making the task nearly impossible. The most realistic design was the Messerschmitt Me-264. The Me-264 was conceived as an ultra-long-range reconnaissance aircraft, later adapted into a bomber on paper. It had a massive wingspan, lightweight construction, and was designed to carry enormous fuel loads. In theory, it could reach distances exceeding 9,000 kilometers under ideal conditions. Designers calculated that the aircraft could fly for over 20 hours, carrying a bomb load of 2 tons. Pilots would need exceptional skill, endurance, and luck to navigate over the open Atlantic, using only rudimentary autopilot systems and dead-reckoning navigation. In reality, ideal conditions never existed. Only 3 prototypes were ever built. They suffered from chronic engine problems, structural stress, and poor handling at heavy weights. The aircraft was underpowered, slow to climb, and dangerously vulnerable to interception. Even if it somehow reached the US coast, it would have arrived alone, unescorted, and likely without enough fuel for a safe return. Any minor deviation in wind, weather, or mechanical performance could have caused catastrophic failure over the open ocean. Another proposal came from Junkers, the Ju-390. This aircraft did fly, and post-war rumors claimed it reached within sight of the American coastline. Those claims remain unproven and are not supported by reliable flight logs. What is known is that the Ju-390 was enormous, complex, and completely impractical for wartime mass production. The aircraft required engines in perfect condition, runways longer than most airfields could provide, and logistical support that Germany could no longer maintain in the late stages of the war. Germany lacked the fuel, aluminum, engines, and production capacity to build a fleet of intercontinental bombers. Each plane constructed represented months of work and enormous resource expenditure, which could have been diverted to defending the Reich's increasingly vulnerable cities and critical industrial centers. Every prototype was a symbol of ambition clashing with reality, a monument to the desperation of a failing empire. As conventional bombers failed to meet Hitler's expectations, attention shifted towards something even more extreme: rockets. Late in the war, German engineers proposed combining the A-9 and A-10 rockets into a two-stage intercontinental ballistic system. The A-10 would lift the A-9 into near space. The A-9 would then glide across the Atlantic at hypersonic speed toward the United States. Early calculations suggested it could travel thousands of kilometers in a single flight, striking major coastal cities. The concept relied on complex guidance systems that did not yet exist, advanced materials resistant to heat and stress, and flawless launches from highly protected facilities. On paper, it was revolutionary. In reality, it was fantasy. Germany could barely mass-produce the V-2, a weapon that consumed enormous resources for limited military effect. An intercontinental rocket system would have required years of testing, stable launch facilities, advanced guidance systems, and a functioning economy. Germany had none of these by 1944. Pilots, engineers, and factory workers were being drafted into frontline service. Supplies were scarce. The Reich's transportation network was crumbling under constant Allied bombing. Even Hitler's inner circle quietly understood this. The project existed more as a symbol of hope than as a real military option. It was an obsession of the Führer, driven by a desperate desire to reverse the course of a war that was already lost. The truth was simple. Project Amerika was not a viable military strategy. It was a psychological weapon meant to restore Hitler's faith in technological miracles, a belief that one impossible breakthrough could reverse an unwinnable war. Engineers were forced to work on projects they knew would never fly. Resources were drained from defensive systems that might have slowed Allied bombing. Time was wasted chasing distance instead of survival. By early 1945, the Amerika bomber concept was effectively dead. Factories were destroyed, fuel was gone, skilled labor had vanished, and Germany's skies were fully controlled by the Allies. No aircraft could even reach Britain safely, let alone cross the Atlantic. The war ended before the first operational intercontinental bomber could ever take off. When the war concluded, Allied forces seized blueprints, prototypes, and unfinished airframes. American and Soviet engineers studied them closely, not because they were afraid of what Germany had nearly done, but because they wanted to understand how far desperation had pushed engineering logic. Lessons learned would influence early Cold War missile and bomber development for decades. Hitler never bombed New York. No German aircraft ever crossed the Atlantic with weapons aboard. But Project Amerika revealed something far more important than a failed attack. It showed how ideology can override physics, how fear can distort strategy, and how even the most advanced technology becomes useless when driven by illusion instead of reality. Project Amerika wasn't a near miss. It was a warning, written in blueprints, fueled by desperation, and buried in the wreckage of a collapsing empire. It was a story of ambition clashing with reality, a tale of how human ingenuity is still bound by the limits of materials, distance, and circumstance, even under the most ruthless of dictators. It serves as a reminder that no matter how visionary or terrifying a plan may seem, the laws of physics, logistics, and time cannot be ignored. Even today, the Amerika bomber concept fascinates historians, engineers, and strategists alike. It represents the edge of possibility in an age of total war, a glimpse into the mind of a dictator willing to gamble everything on a single technological dream, and a cautionary tale about the consequences of letting ideology outpace reality.